At 16 years old, I was dragged out of the closet. I never really had a chance to come out to the people I cared most about. I'll back up a bit. When I was 15 years old, I fell in love for the first time ever, and it just so happened to be with a girl. That girl was my best friend that I had known for just over a year. As much as this surprised everyone else in my life, a year later when that closet door came flying open out of nowhere, it also threw me for a curveball at the time. Now looking back, there were so many signs that I was queer as hell. But nonetheless, I was able to not so contently suppress this part of my identity for quite some time. I was actually terrified to come out to myself and admit that my feelings towards the same sex were valid. While I still recognized an attraction to the opposite sex, I could not for the life of me shake the feelings I had for this girl. I had never felt anything like it. Being a sophomore in high school, I went to school dances with guys and tried dating a few, but none of it felt right. I remember thinking to myself, why? Why am I feeling this way? Why a girl? It took months of overthinking, anxiety, and crying myself to sleep before I realized that this feeling was no phase. I remember the night I called her. I was a wreck. I asked if she could pick me up from my parents' house and go for a drive with me. I sat in the passenger seat, staring at the tall trees and happy houses, gazing at the moon, wishing I was there instead. I was shaking. I told her I had something really important to tell her. We pulled into a parking lot and sat in the silence for what felt like forever. I felt sick. In a moment of terror and bravery, I looked at her and said, "I'm bi, and I think I'm in love with a girl." "Oh, okay, cool," she responded. Cool, it was cool. In the months to follow after this conversation, I became more bold and you could say more flirty. We spent hours texting, Snapchatting, and hanging out in person every chance we could. One particular evening, as we were lounging around in a room, I courageously blurted out, "Do you want to date me?" She looked up at me with half a smirk and said, "Sure." I was elated. So here I was, keeping myself, my girlfriend, and our relationship in the closet. She was already out to her parents and friends, and I was still heterosexual Hannah in everyone else's eyes. Being happily head over heels, I wanted to be cheesy and share my love too, just not with anyone in my personal life. So I turned to the magical world of social media. Tumblr, to be exact. Yep. It felt so freeing to follow other queer people and show my relationship off proudly. This, of course, quickly backfired. One day, I fell asleep on the couch in my parents' living room with my phone nearby. My phone alerted me every time I got a notification. Apparently, everyone on Tumblr loved what I was posting that day. My mom just so happened to be sitting in the chair next to me when she heard the notifications going off. Being the curious and concerned mother she is, she tracked down the source of these notifications and stumbled upon essentially my big queer online diary. To her surprise, she found many pictures of my girlfriend and I holding hands, kissing, just generally being cute. I awoke from a happy slumber and entered a real-life nightmare. My mom was sitting across from me with tears in her eyes and just said, "Why didn't you tell me?" I was sick, I was confused, I was wide awake. In the short time that I was sleeping, my mom had discovered that I was in fact not straight, told all my immediate family members for me, dad, siblings, aunts, and uncles, and just like that, I was stripped bare in front of everyone, and I was not ready. While most of my family was supportive, they were also in disbelief for a while. There were questions, lots of them. I told my mom that I identified as bi. Because of this label, she continued to press the possibility of me being with men in the future. I did not feel fully accepted. My current partner was a girl, my attraction to women was real, and the possibility of me marrying a woman was high. In order to kind of force her to accept the idea of me dating and potentially marrying a woman in the future, I changed my identity to lesbian. It wasn't until recently that I changed my identity back to bisexual or queer, and it was not easy, but this is a big part of my identity, and it's okay. Flash forward to today, in this very moment, in front of all of you, I can proudly say that I am happier than I ever thought possible. I do have a wonderfully supportive family, group of friends, and a pretty kick-ass girlfriend who I've been lucky enough to build a life with for the past 6 years. Love you. I still can't seem to shake those feelings I had for her back in high school, and I don't ever want to. Oh, and if anyone is wondering, her name is Hannah, too.
I used to wear a lot of hats. This is a phrase I use time and time again to describe my coming out story. To preface, I'm a female assigned at birth individual. My first recollection of coming out was when I was in 8th grade. I came out as a lesbian to my mother one night when she was taking a smoke break. She, a Catholic at the time, took this surprisingly well. Even more surprisingly, she started telling me stories about her times in Canada with her group of gay friends. She radically accepted me for who I was. Life was pretty good. A while after I came out to my mother as a lesbian, I started questioning my sexuality once again. I went from identifying as a lesbian to identifying as bisexual, back to being a lesbian, to panromantic demisexual, and finally to pansexual panromantic. I came back out to my mother when I began identifying as pansexual/panromantic. She reacted well. She said she was happy that I was attracted to men. She was excited at the prospect of me possibly bearing her some grandchildren in the future. Today, I continue questioning my sexual and romantic orientation every now and then, though I've come to the conclusion that while I may have some restrictions on my attraction, pansexual and panromantic are the words that I most likely will always use to describe my sexual and romantic orientation. Now, gender identity. Oh goodness, gender identity. Like most people in my generation, I grew up on the internet. My first exposure to transgender individuals outside of trashy television shows like Maury, Dr. Phil, was on the internet. When I was in 6th grade, I followed an artist who was an openly pansexual, polyamorous trans man. He live streamed with his microphone on for the very first time, and his voice was way more feminine than people had come to expect. This led to a lot of people in the chat room asking about what gender he actually was. He said that he was a trans man and explained what that meant to him. And I thought that was so cool. I didn't know why at the time, but just the thought of trans people existing, wow, what a concept. It made me very excited, even though I didn't know why. I didn't start actually questioning my gender identity until 8th grade. Around this time, researching things on the internet became one of my favorite pastimes. Because of this, I eventually stumbled across websites that were dedicated to creating transgender awareness. From these websites, I learned a lot about gender identities and how other people experience gender. At this time, I luckily had a friend that was a very good LGBTQ+ ally. I eventually confided to her that I was questioning my gender identity and wanted to experiment. I tried on many different identities and used so many different pronoun sets, all of which my friend validated me in. She would even use the pronouns I was experimenting with when she would refer to me. For about a year, I was just experimenting and trying to figure out myself and my gender identity. After a long while of experimentation, I came to a crossroads with how I identified. I was stuck between identifying as transgender, FTM, and non-binary. Although I felt like I was 100% non-binary, I decided to come out as transgender. I did this mainly because at the time, being transgender was easier to explain to people than being non-binary was. I wrote a small coming out letter and read it to my mother one night before bed. She was quiet at first, then sad, then angry. She yelled at me and told me that I can't take away her only daughter, that I wasn't allowed to be transgender. She wouldn't let me cut my hair, wouldn't change the name or pronouns she used for me, nothing. I wasn't allowed to be who I felt I was at the time, at all. She took my internet privileges away, and I spiraled into a pretty rough period of depression after this. My mental health got worse, and so did my dysphoria. A year later, I tried coming out again, except this time I wrote a 10-page coming out letter. I explained what being transgender meant, how I experienced being trans, what dysphoria made me feel like, and included pieces of vent art that I created at the very end of the letter. I read this letter to my mother and showed her my artwork. This time, she was quiet. And then she cried, and she continued crying. She told me that she did research into what being transgender meant and how people's stories touched her heart. She accepted me. She started talking to me about getting me onto testosterone, which was something I wanted to do at the time, changing my name and doing anything I wanted to make me feel more comfortable in my body. I then came out on Facebook and subsequently my entire high school. Everyone took it pretty well. My friends and teachers started using my new name and pronouns. I got access to my school's one-stall bathroom. It was overall a pretty positive experience. Another year later, I got on testosterone, legally changed my name and gender marker, and was well into my transition. I was happy. And then, suddenly, dysphoria. Again, he, him pronouns started making me feel uncomfortable. For a while, I couldn't figure out why. And then it hit me. Oh, right. Being non-binary? Yeah, that's a thing. That me. I did some self-reflection and decided that, yeah, it was time to finally come out. Again! I wrote another small coming out letter for my mother. I read it to her one night and she kind of just shrugged me off. She told me that they, them pronouns were not grammatically correct, told me that people can either be male or female, and she refused to accept me. At this point, though, I didn't care much. I had a lot of reasons to dislike my mother during this time in my life. Regardless of her acceptance or lack thereof of me, I came out on Facebook and subsequently my whole high school. Again! This time, though, it was hard. I lost some of my friends because they thought I was fake and attention-seeking. A lot of people didn't use they, them pronouns for me and actually started being actively cruel towards me. People would taunt me with my birth name, call me she, he, you know, the works. When I came out to, this one's a kicker. When I came out to the doctor that I go through to get testosterone, he shrugged it off. He said that non-binary people basically don't exist, and he kept raising my testosterone levels, and because I'm non-confrontational, I didn't say anything, but kept raising my testosterone levels, and I got to a point where testosterone has made me a dysphoria-inducing amount of masculine. Long story short, coming out as non-binary was rough, to say the least. Overall, coming out has been a roller coaster of an experience for me. There have been good experiences, and there have been pretty awful experiences. At WU, I've made so many LGBTQ+ friends, and have found LGBTQ+ spaces where I can truly be myself. I still sometimes question my orientation and gender identity, and because of the LGBTQ+ community here at U, I've come to learn that that's okay. I've been off of testosterone and hormone blockers for several months now. I still get dysphoric about how masculine testosterone has made me, but because other people have accepted me, I've started accepting myself. My mom has finally started to try using they, them pronouns for me, which isn't to say that we get along, however, at least we have this going for us at the very least. I take pride in being who I am now. I'm Aaron, a name which is now spelled in a way that makes me less dysphoric. I'm a pansexual/panromantic non-binary trans person who is currently questioning where I fit on the non-binary spectrum, and I am proud.
I knew I was gay from the time I was really, really young. In elementary school, there were kids my same age who went out on the playground with me, and we did some exploring, right? We did some exploring of each other's anatomy. I'll show you mine if you show me yours, that kind of thing, right? And I discovered through that I did have an attraction to other kids of the same gender. And as I grew up, we watched a TV program called Dukes of Hazzard. There's lots of youngsters in the room tonight. You may not be familiar with the Dukes of Hazzard and Chips, okay? But there was a couple of really handsome guys on those shows. And in the late 70s, early 80s, the captioning on those shows were not great, okay? Not great captioning. So what I did was I parked myself right in front of the TV, okay? Sat crisscross, open-mouthed, and watched as Eric Estrada donned that belt, that police belt, and those tight pants, and, got out of that car with a package. That package was bulging, and I was just mouth agape. I thought, that is hot. I knew where I aligned. Growing up in school, being LGBTQ was not particularly accepted, okay? So I'm going to put that journey on hold for a minute. When I was 18, I'd already been with a man. I was a high school wrestler, Latino wrestler jock. Again, we go back to the package, okay? And this guy had it. And he was good looking to boot. But I didn't end up coming out until my second year of college. I attended college at the National Technical Institute for the Deaf, a college of RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology. And as a student there, at the age of 19, I knew I was gay, firmly in the gay camp. I called my mom. This was October 11th of 1992. My mom was living in San Diego, California at the time, and here I was in New York. And we used a TTY, okay, a teletype machine, which, again, all of you in the younger generation may not be familiar with this. There was a phone you'd actually dial, it would be the dial thing. You put the hand receiver, the handset, on the coupler of that device. You'd type words out to the other party who you were conversing with, okay, over the phone. My mom would type back to me. I would type to her. She would type to me consecutively, right? Consecutive conversation. So I was in conversation with my mom via this device, and I said, Mom, I'm gay. My mom was very accepting, very supportive. She said, great. And I have a lot of questions to ask you. I said, okay. She said, is it because I was a bad mom? I said, no, Mom. She said, is it because I didn't remarry and you didn't have a father figure? I said, no. She said, is it because I didn't have a boyfriend? I said, no. So she asked me this sort of normal, litany of questions. I said, Mom, you are not a failure as a mother. You did just fine, right? Gay is me, who I am. Okay, it's not anything to do with you or how you raised me. My mom said, okay, great. So she was very accepting. Now, while I was in college, again, I came out when I was 19 there. In that college environment, it was not particularly accepting. So there were lots of challenges. Remember this being the early 90s, I was really struggling to come forward as a gay individual. I mean, there's like the faculty, staff, student body that kind of comes together to either make a positive environment or a non-positive environment. And I actually ended up writing an article in the student newspaper, and a lot of that I've carried to this day, right? A lot of these stories, and the story that I'm sharing with you today, right? It's been a long journey coming out. So the next thing that I was intending to happen tonight was a surprise, right? It was my mom's involvement in the story. My mom was going to come out of the audience. She was going to come up to the stage, and she was going to make a statement. But she had surgery last Thursday, and unfortunately, she doesn't feel well enough to attend tonight. But she had planned to come up onto the stage, as I'm doing now, right? March up to this microphone that I'm pretending is here, which the interpreter is holding, but I'm pretending is here, and make an announcement that she had told me 6 years after I came out to her, right? Wherein she told me that she was lesbian. And that concludes my monologue. Thank you all so much.
I am the youngest of 6 kids, born to a Southern Baptist preacher and a housewife. I was born in the small town of Vivian, Louisiana in 1969. There were no gay people in my town. Of course there were. They were just hiding. I had no name for or concept of a gay person. No frame of reference. Then came AIDS, in the 1980s. The fear and fury rippled through my small town. Be careful in public, they said. Refuse to take a blood transfusion, they said. Don't use public bathrooms. And then came the celebrity deaths. Rock Hudson, Liberace. I know most of y'all don't know who I'm talking about when I say those names. And a friend's brother died in 1986. My daddy, the Southern Baptist preacher, said, that's what they all get for being queer. They were all condemned to hell, according to my daddy. I was raised in church, of course. We were there twice on Sunday and once on Wednesdays. I always believed John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. So, of course, I thought he loved me too. Slowly, I began to attempt to come to terms that I was gay. I still hadn't heard the term lesbian yet. Didn't know what that was. One night outside the Piggly Wiggly, anybody know what a Piggly Wiggly is? Good. Small town, remember? Outside the Piggly Wiggly of my hometown where all the teenagers hung out, I got into a fight. Kelly, Angela, and I were hanging out in a section of the parking lot. As Angela walked over towards another group of people, Kelly said to me, "You're sweet on her, aren't you, queer?" This filled me with terror. No one had ever called me out before. No one knew my secret I tried so hard to protect. Yet here Kelly was, saying it out loud in the middle of the parking lot. I saw red. I pounced on Kelly and began to punch her. "Take it back," I said. "You are the queer," I said. She attempted to fight back, but she was not operating on fear and anger and shame like I was. Angela rushed back over and pulled me off of Kelly. I glared at Kelly. If I could have killed her, I would have. She was my sister's friend, so I had to make things right? I can't let that go on. So I talked to her, and I apologized. She did as well. Months or so later, we talked. We came out to each other. It was such a huge relief, and we realized we'd been projecting on one another. And the most comforting part, there was another person in my small town that was like me. My biggest struggle at this age was reconciling my faith with the realization that I was gay. How could the God that I learned about in Sunday school, the God that gave us rainbows, the God that gave us baby Jesus, how could that God find me an abomination like my daddy claimed? I began to think that I must change something fundamental about myself in order to get into heaven. My family were forever trying to set me up with a nice young man. I became very depressed. I drank a lot. I was angry that God and my family condemned me to hell simply for who I love. I flunked out of college after a year and a half. My life was in absolute upheaval. Shortly after, I was sexually assaulted. I subsequently attempted suicide. I was, as we put it in the South, a hot mess. My parents put me in therapy at a Southern Baptist affiliated clinic with the hopes that I could be fixed. I know they suspected I was gay. Maybe they had heard lesbian by now, I don't know. And hoped that I could be converted back to normal. I had news for them. I never was and never would be what they considered to be normal. I actually had a fantastic therapist. He really saved my life by helping me to understand that I had value and that God loved me just the way I am. With the help of supportive friends, I began to heal. When I was 21, I was having a conversation with my friend Abby Abby and I have been friends since 3rd grade, and I've been thinking about coming out to her. We were in my truck one night after riding around town, because that's what you did. You looped through the Piggly Wiggly parking lot and then down to the Sonic parking lot, back to the Piggly Wiggly parking lot. That's what you did. So, still 21 years of age, that's what I'm doing. That's all there is. That's why I left. I mean, it's just one of the reasons. Anyway. And so I told, I'd been thinking about telling Abby, and so I said, Abby, I got something to tell you. And she said, okay. And I said, I'm gay. And she said, oh, I thought so. She said, are you attracted to me? And I said, no. And then she said, don't you want to kiss me? Again, I said, no. Why not? She said, seemingly offended. I mean, she was upset. I looked at her incredulously. I asked her, are you attracted to every guy you see or every guy that you know? Of course not, she replied. I went on to explain to her that I was not attracted to all women. It just doesn't work that way. She was truly upset that I did not have a romantic or sexual interest in her. Honestly, our friendship went off the rails not too long after that. A few years later, I was talking with my friend Myron. He and I have been friends since 4th grade. And you grow up with these people, and I say I didn't know anybody that was gay, and I have a high school full of people that I know are gay now that I didn't know then, because I didn't know what they looked like. Nobody wore a tag or hat or nothing back then. So it's hard to figure that out. Anyway, or I'm a little slow on the uptake. That could be the thing, too. So I was talking with my friend Myron, this is several years later, and he said his being gay and my being gay wouldn't keep us from heaven. And he said he'd had a conversation with his pastor who had said the only thing that can separate us from God the only thing that's a sin is what we let separate us from God. My sexual orientation prevented me from having a relationship with God only if I let it, in other words. I felt like I was now in complete control of my destiny. That was like the final piece. The chains I'd bound myself with had begun to loosen. I began to love and accept myself as I never had before. Excuse me. Fast forward through some years, many years. I met this wonderful woman with 2 little girls that I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. Almost 14 years later, I still have to pinch myself sometimes when I realize what an amazing life I have. Beth has truly always been my #1 fan. I have great friends. I have a great job. I have a great church. I've had some struggles, but I've also been immensely blessed. Some people seem to come out of the womb knowing who and what they are. Others, like me, are like me, and they're maybe like you. If you're struggling, as I did, it will get better, but I won't lie to you and tell you it'll be easy. It takes strength and determination that those self-assured folks have never possessed. But it's all been worth it, and I wouldn't change a thing. Thanks.
So I wrote this after I was given the opportunity to listen to Megan Foley perform her piece, Coming Out and Being Pushed Back In Again. And the line was, when you look like I do, you don't so much as come out of the closet as you do a revolving door. Coming out and being pushed back in again so many times a day that you get dizzy. Being queer and femme is people wondering why I use they, them pronouns. You don't look non-binary. Being queer, femme, married to a cisgendered heterosexual man, is going into queer spaces and getting stares. It's pulling back my hair to show my undercut in hopes that that might clue people in. Being queer, femme, married to a cishet man, and Polly is being told on a date, you being gay isn't a problem right now, insinuating that because my partner is male right now, that I'm the good kind of gay. Being queer, femme, married to a cishet man, poly, and now dating a man, is being asked by people who have only ever known me as queer if I'm sure of my gayness. Being queer, femme, married to a cishet man, poly, dating a man, in the community is not wanting to hold hands in a gay bar. Because I do not want to be misidentified as straight. It took me this long to come out. And I am not about to be put back in. It's second-guessing going to Pride because I'm not sure if I'm gay enough. It's stumbling over the words trying to explain to my amazing ally of a husband, I'm not sure if I fit in anywhere anymore. It's waiting 3 months to tell my boyfriend I use they, them pronouns, all while posting out and proud photos on Facebook because I'm afraid he won't believe me. I am femme. But then he apologizes for not using my pronouns, and he tells me he would have used they from the very beginning. And I realized, being queer, femme, married to a cishet man, poly, dating a man in the community doesn't make you less gay. It simply is having to come out of the closet more times a day, pushing through that revolving door, no matter how many times I am pushed back in. And no matter how many times it happens, it's important to keep pushing through those doors for all the other queer femme thems out there. I am femme, married to a cishet man, poly, dating another man in the community, but none of that will ever erase that I am queer.
If you saw our promotional materials, you saw that we have 2 very special guest storytellers tonight. And when Ted and I first did this production in 2015 here at Western, we saw people come and continue to walk in and continue to walk in, and we had to keep setting up chairs. Like, we guessed maybe 100 would come, and we got to like 250, and we're like, oh, we gotta get more chairs. And we've consistently seen this audience, and that's why we took this show to Portland. And in doing the show in Portland, we came across 2 storytellers that embody our potential for who we can be as Western. We've done the show 10 times now, 3 times at Western, 7 times in Portland, different casts, different productions. And we met these 2 folks. Last fall, the second storyteller you're going to hear in a minute, their story was featured on Pantsuit Nation and went viral and has been seen about 6,800 times since our Coming Out Monologues production in Portland. But what these stories embody is who we are as Western. Who do we want to be? How do we want to be affirming and supportive for future students? And for parents who are looking at our college and saying, is my kid going to be safe here? Is my kid going to be affirmed in their identity here, celebrated in their identity here, welcomed, not misgendered, not invalidated? So these 2 stories are a parent and a child. And I want you to hear them, and you will love them as much as Ted and I do.
I'm going to be reading to you from my diary, and I want to preface that the journal entry that I'm going to read is 9 years old, a letter to my child, and the sentiment was and is authentic. But the misuse of pronouns and the misgendering of my daughter is incredibly awkward and wrong to me now. I'm reading this letter as is with my daughter's permission for the sake of storytelling and telling from a time and a place and a perspective that I stood, where I stood nearly a decade ago. Sunday, October 31st, 2010. My sweet boy, is it really possible that I could love you more today than when you were born? I didn't know that my heart could expand so much. You are now 2 3/4 years old. You are quite the talker and storyteller now. You're not nearly as interested in the world that you live in and all the facts that accompany it as you are in the fanciful stories you create and the places your imagination takes you. The past couple weeks, you've been assuring me that you will protect me from mean crocodiles and purple dragons. How very chivalrous of you. You are an extremely focused little boy, as well as very persistent. Once you get your mind set on something, there's nothing anyone can say or do to keep you from it. Your determination is quite admirable, but at times it's difficult to watch as you set out to do something you're not yet capable of or coordinated to accomplish, especially when you absolutely refuse help. No matter how frustrated you get, we have to sit back and watch your repeated efforts. At this stage in your life, this trait of persistence reaps frustration, crying, tantrums, and such. But later in your life, this trait will prove to be quite the attribute: focused, determined, concentrated, self-reliant, goal-oriented. With time, your capabilities and patience will increase, and this, I imagine, will make you quite the accomplished young man. Whatever you set out to do, whatever you want to be, you will succeed. Right now, my guess would be that you'll be a writer. But when we ask you what you want to be when you grow up, you say either a mommy or a princess. And if we attempt to correct your answers and say daddy or prince, you assert your original answers with conviction. You've even announced to me on a couple unprovoked occasions, Mama, I'm a girl. Given you've been dressing yourself in skirts and wearing hair, my dish towels, on your head for the past several weeks, I've had to question what your gender identity and/or sexual orientation may be. Although our honest preference would be for you to be heterosexual for the mere sake of an easier and less judged existence in the outside religiously influenced world. Your father and I both agree, we don't care if you're gay. Let me rephrase that. Because we care very much about you, your identity, your happiness, etc. What I meant to say is that we will love you for you, whoever you are, no matter what. You are our child. And our love for you is unconditional. Don't clap yet. Because I can't end crying. I'd like to end on a more lighthearted note. And this is about Ella's dad's reaction to my first mention of the possibility that our child was transgender. Keep in mind that her dad is a self-proclaimed redneck. And when I first told him that our son might actually be a girl, he got really quiet, and I got really nervous. I braced myself for the worst. I stammered and nervously asked, "So, what do you think?" He got annoyed and pissed, but not for the reason I thought. He was indeed mad and upset, but it was because I worried that he would have a problem with our child's identity. What, you think like I'm not going to love my kid? You think this changes anything? So it goes to show, yes, it goes to show that even I had to write this down because he has a long list, goes to show that even a truck driving, gun toting, hunting, fishing, weekend wood chopping, chainsaw wielding, redneck, can understand and practice unconditional love. It's pretty simple and easy to love someone. We have one job as parents: to unconditionally love our children. It's that simple. And when you have a daughter like Ella, it's that easy.
Hi, my name is Ella. When I was born, everyone thought I was a boy. But adults aren't always as smart as they think they are. A few years ago, I was always angry and upset living as a boy. But now I'm a happy girl. You're lucky you're meeting me today, not when I was 5. When I was 2.5, I told my mom I was a girl. She listened and told me she loved me no matter who I am. She didn't understand 100%, but it didn't really matter because I could be myself most of the time. I could wear whatever I wanted and play with whatever toys I wanted. I played with dolls and read my favorite fairy tale, Sleeping Beauty. I wore my older sister's clothes all the time. I'd take her PJ bottoms or dish towels and wear them on my head so I could pretend I have long hair. I was pretty happy until I started kindergarten. Dun, dun, dun. That's when I found out I was somehow different, being shoved in a box I didn't belong in. I was so excited to start kindergarten. I picked out a new backpack and a lunchbox. I couldn't wait to start big kid school. I wasn't nervous at all when my mom dropped me off on the first day of school. I didn't cling to her at all. I happily waved goodbye and walked into my new classroom. When I was in preschool, all my friends played dress up. We all played with stuffed animals and dolls. We all used the same bathroom. But on the first day of kindergarten, I learned that boys get in one line and girls get in the other. Boys use this bathroom and girls use that bathroom. Boys play over here at recess. Boys play over here at recess and girls play over there. I was so confused. Why was everyone putting me in this line when my friends were in that line? Why were kids making fun of my rainbow unicorn lunchbox? I learned that I was expected to be a boy. I was supposed to act a certain way. I learned that who I really am and what I wanted to do was not an option in this world. My personality changed instantly that day. My happy, cheerful, friendly self was crushed. I became angry, mean, uncooperative, and even violent. I felt like I was a volcano. I was constantly bubbling with anger like hot lava. I didn't really know it back then, but my mom was frantically trying to get me help. She started to understand who I really am. Before I transitioned, I was bullied at school. I didn't want to play rough with all the boys, and they didn't want to sit or talk or draw fairies with me. Girls didn't want to play with me either because they thought I was a boy with cooties. I only had one friend, Amanda. She didn't care that I was different. We could play in the monkey bars together or play dress up. She became my best friend, and my only friend. I was bullied a lot. There was one kid who waited until I was hanging from the monkey bars and then pulled down my pants in front of a bunch of other kids. They all laughed at me. This wasn't the only time this kid did things like that. There's a lot of sad stuff in my story before I transitioned, but I want to get to the good parts. In the beginning of 2nd grade, I read the book George, about a transgender girl who gets the courage to come out. It was the first time I'd ever heard the word transgender. I blurted out, "Mama, that's like me!" A few months later, an adult I knew transitioned to live as herself, and I realized that it's not just something in books. People really can transition to live as their true self. That's when I knew I was going to start living as the girl I really am. One day, my mom asked me if I wanted to go to Fred Meyer with her and see how it felt to be myself. Is Nutella delicious? Of course I said yes. I was really nervous people wouldn't believe me or make fun of me. But when the cashier said, "How are you two ladies doing tonight?" I knew that everything was going to be okay. A few weeks later, on February 26, 2016, In the middle of second grade, I went to school for the first time as Ella. I was super excited, but also really scared. Thankfully, my big sister Piper was always by my side. My sister is an awesome ally, and she's got my back. Sure, she gives me a hard time sometimes. We argue about who gets to lick the last bits of Nutella out of the Nutella jar. But she won't let anyone else treat me bad. She promised to look out for me at school. I was afraid kids would make fun of me and be mean to me on my first day as myself. But everyone was pretty nice. In fact, a lot of the kids were actually jealous that I got to pick my own name. I named myself after Anne Hathaway's movie Ella Enchanted. The main character is Ella. Her wacky fairy godmother gave her the gift of obedience. But it was actually cursed because she had to do whatever people told her to do. Whatever people told her to do. Kids at school made her do embarrassing things because she wouldn't disobey their orders. Her stepmother and stepsisters made her do all the housework. Ella was so unhappy with the curse of obedience. She tried to find her fairy godmother to beg her to take back the gift. But Ella finally realized that she could break the curse with her own will. I related to her because the world was forcing me to live as a boy. I tried to be obedient, but it never felt right or natural to me. And just like Ella did in the movie, I listened to my inner voice and broke the curse with my own will. I was reintroduced to my class as Ella. I was like a new kid at school. I made lots of friends that first week. I became so happy and confident that no one bullied me anymore. I have lots of friends now, but I still have my BFF from kindergarten, Amanda. There are still some people who don't accept me. They're a loss. But there are way more... But there are way more people that love and support me. Now I'm a role model to other trans kids at my school. I love talking to younger trans kids. I feel like I'm from the future with a message that it's going to be okay. Be yourself and life will be good, like Nutella.
So I grew up in a Christian family, Baptist, conservative. There was a lot of prayer. Prayer before bed, prayer before school, definitely prayer before dinner. We also had a lot of family time. Family meetings, family gatherings, family dinners, birthdays as a family, and holidays as a family. I was in college and missed one such holiday with my family. It was Thanksgiving, which means I also missed the family prayer that year. The tradition for the family prayer was to grab a pine cone in the center of the table and then pass around a basket. After sharing what you're thankful for, you place the pine cone in the basket and pass it to the next person. My dad started, solemnly thanking God for the many blessings he'd received over the past year. Then he placed his pine cone in the basket and passed it to my mom. She shared her year's worth of gratitude, and the basket was passed to my aunt. Slowly, the basket is passed through the hands of the entire extended family, going from aunt to uncle to cousin to aunt to uncle to grandma, until it came to my sister, who was second to last. And without missing a beat, she took the basket, and holding a pine cone in one hand, she said with great reverence, "God, I am so thankful for pussy." For the taste of it for the smell, and for the fact that my girlfriend sitting right here with the entire extended family is able to share all of that with us today. And she then very delicately placed the pine cone in the basket and passed it to her girlfriend. And that was my sister's way of coming out. So it's now the day after Thanksgiving. I'm sitting in my college dorm at a very small college in Buffalo, New York, and my phone is ringing. It's my mom. Before even going through the traditional niceties of, hi, how you doing, how's school? She describes the horrific, lewd, uncivilized, sinful things my sister has said at Thanksgiving. Prayer. She wants me to counsel my sister, find out what's wrong with her, offer some sisterly wisdom. What she didn't know is that I was dating a woman myself. And in fact, the only person in my family who knew was my older brother. As my mom got off the phone with me, that same brother who'd overheard the conversation asked, what's Christy gonna do about her sister? She's gay. That was enough to really rattle my mom. And she decided to recruit my dad to drive the hour and a half out to Buffalo to sit down with me and find out what was wrong with me. Not knowing that my brother had just outed me to my mom, when my dad called and asked me to lunch, I readily agreed, looking forward to having time with him. So no sooner had we sat down at this restaurant than Dad, a military vet who continues to carry himself with the Marine's posture and whose voice barks like a drill sergeant, looked me straight in the eye and pointedly asked, do you like women? This question kind of caught me off guard, and my natural defense was to intellectualize away the discomfort. Knowing that it's much more sensible to appeal to my dad's Christian worldview, to answer a question with a question, just as I'd been taught Jesus would do, I replied, Dad, do you like women? He started shifting in his seat, noticeably uncomfortable with this task of asking about his daughter's sexuality and being then asked about his own. So with a cough and a guttural squawk, he responded, well, of course, but because that's normal. So, as my father, and you are my role model, looking up to you and modeling your behavior, that's normal, right? So, psychologically speaking, the fact that both of us are interested in women, completely normal. With a perplexed expression on his face, I could see the wheels were turning, and he was trying to articulate a strong rebuttal. Coming up with nothing, he just kind of shrugged, shaking his head and said, I just don't get it. It's not normal. And then like a light bulb went off, he said, okay, all right, how about this? Why don't you and I, we just won't talk for a while. And then, like, when I understand it, when I understand you, I'll reach out. But until then, let's not be in contact. So I said, Dad, I love you, and I'll respect your process. To me, it's kind of analogous to picking up a law book, opening the pages, realizing it's far too difficult to understand the first read through, placing it on a shelf, and rationalizing that with time and distance, you'll better understand it. If it were me, I would spend even more time with that book. I'd carry it around, talk to others who have read it, even get in touch with the author. And with time, I'd grow to understand what the book contained. Might not agree with it, but at least I'd understand and love it. We left that restaurant that day with a simple hug, and it took him and my mom a few months to give me a call. However, I have to believe that it was my intellectual explanation rather than my sister's lurid details. Family time, and yes, probably even a few prayers. They influenced my parents into becoming avid advocates, eventually even of marriage equality. In fact, it was only 14 years later that both my mom and my dad walked me down the aisle on my wedding day, when I married my wife. And she's the book that I wanted to study and learn from for the rest of my life.
I've been coming out since I was 14. I was bi, and then I was gender fluid, but still bi. And then I was having more and more boy days. So I was a demi-boy, and then I had an epiphany, and suddenly I was trans. But that's not what this is about. I'm going to give you a highlight reel of some of my most memorable trans moments. As a queer trans man, these happen to me all the time. Sometimes they're funny, sometimes uncomfortable, and sometimes downright sad. But this is highlights of the trans experience from the point of view of a 20-year-old twink. We all know who Caitlyn Jenner is by now. When she was entering the public eye, I had been out for somewhere between 9 months and a year. I went to a high school with pretty good sex ed, even queer inclusive, awkward as it may have been. My teacher, Mr. Hume, explained that there are 3 sexual orientations, gay, straight, and bi, and that your sexual orientation is based on your chromosomes. With Caitlyn Jenner being exclusively attracted to women, logically one could assume that she's a lesbian. Mr. Hume, however, said that she's straight because her chromosomes are XY. In that same class, we did a unit on healthy relationships. One day, the class split up by gender to talk about what they look for in the opposite sex. Now, we don't have time to unpack all of that, so too long didn't read. Teenage boys hate body hair and real women. Girls want the bare minimum, and I was too mortified to care. Coming out to my maternal grandparents was really difficult. They're Seventh-day Adventists and staunch Republicans. I did it at the beginning of my senior year, about 2 months after I started testosterone. I figured I should probably come out to my family before they watched me change a bunch. My grandparents on both sides were very involved in my life from an early age, and they were at least as integral to my development as a human being as 90s alternative and hip-hop music was. My grandma thought I was doing it because of my childhood trauma, but I'd rather she accept it for the wrong reasons than not accept it at all. My grandpa, on the other hand, said that I was never meant to be a boy and that any doctor that would prescribe me testosterone was practicing child abuse. That one stung, and it probably always will. I also have a lot of anxiety about dating. With Tinder, Grindr, Bumble, I have to be so careful and make sure that every date I go on, every guy I hook up with, isn't going to literally murder me when they found out I was born female. I don't even put it on my dating profiles other than Grindr, but let's be real, that's not really a dating site. I just usually prefer to address it on my own terms individually and not have it be the first thing people know about me. Most people have actually been pretty cool about it, even those who aren't necessarily the most educated on the topic. But I've had my fair share of weird, creepy, and offensive messages as well. Fair warning, some of these are a little less than family friendly. Some of the more memorable opening lines I've gotten include, "What do you think about straight guys who think you're hot?" I don't know. "I'm old enough to be your dad, LOL, but I promise if you're naughty, I won't ground you. I'll buy you a new bicycle." "Would love to see a picture of your fresh ass." I'm sure you would. And one of my personal favorites, "Literal boy pussy, I like it, LOL," to which I responded, "Kindly fuck off." Something else I think it's really important to address is the things no one tells you about taking hormones. Sure, yeah, facial hair, deep voice, hairy legs, whatever, but no one tells you that your butt is going to get so hairy, and you sweat so much, and you won't have 400 emotions bouncing around your head at once, probably due in part to the fact that most of your negative emotions convert to anger. And once you've been on hormones for long enough, your body will be entirely masculine, except for, well, the things on your chest and the lack of things between your legs, which puts you in a really weird place when you look at your body. But on the other hand, no one told me I was going to size up in shirts because my shoulders were going to get so broad, or that everything down to the muscle structure in my legs would be masculine, or that I was going to get a killer jawline and a prominent Adam's apple out of the deal. This is what trans looks like. Thank you.
All right, take a look at my picture. This was a while back. Enjoy, because you won't see that again. Okay, let's get started. For those of you that know me, you know I'm a sociable person. And also know that when it comes to personal matters, I am very private. I have always been this way. Growing up, my mom was my best friend, my confidant, the one person I could tell everything and anything to, knowing very well that her advice would be a rational and unprejudiced one. I remember being in 4th grade, 9 years old, a tomboy. Or in other words, playing with boys, not caring about my appearance, and telling my mom innocently, one day after school, "Mamá, pienso que Adriana es muy hermosa. Me encantan sus ojos. Tal vez algún día me case con ella. Ma, I think Adriana is so pretty. I really like her eyes. Maybe one day I'll marry her." To then be told, "Mija, está bien admirar la belleza de las mujeres, pero las muchachas se casan con muchachos, no con otras muchachas. Mija, it's okay to admire other women's beauty, but girls marry boys, not other girls." Flash forward to sophomore year of high school. Eyeliner, mascara, form-fitting clothes, girly, conforming, and unhappy with myself. I stumbled upon a cute romance book about 2 girls falling in love at the school library. Reading it was like lighting a fire within me, whispering to me, "You're gay. And it's okay." I'm home, sitting at my desk, reading this book nonstop until I am finally able to peel my eyes off of it, so I toss it on my futon. Out of sight, out of mind. Maybe now I will be able to focus on my homework. In walks my mom without knocking per usual. Asks me if I want to eat and sits comfortably to chat. I was just able to start focusing on homework. I guess hora de chismear it is. Gossip time it is. Nah, I'm not complaining though. Who am I kidding? I love it. We talk for a bit, and then she curiously picks up the book, asking me what it's about. Amor, I say. Love. As she reads the back cover. ¿Qué es esto? Es obsceno. Son cochinadas. Esto no es amor. Esto es un pecado. What is this? This is obscene, disgusting. This is not what love is. This is a sin. Shocked, I stay quiet and reply, no sé. Pensé que era de amor. Te prometo que solo es amor inocente. I don't know. I thought it was love. I promise it's only puppy love. Pain, shame, confusion. Conflicting thoughts between what is right and what is wrong. What I feel and what I should feel. In that moment, everything changed. My mom, my best friend, my confidant, was now a distant person, far out of reach. The one person I could tell everything to and be authentically myself with became the person I had to pretend around. We're sitting on the bench after our junior class field trip, visiting the aquarium. It's been a busy day, and now we're all making jokes, having fun. I pull out a Twinkie. Twinkies. I start eating it, and feeling gets on the outside of my lips. You point it out, move towards me, and say you'll remove it for me. Before I can think, you're kissing me. But in this moment, I knew I was definitely, most definitely, not straight. We only lasted as that kiss lasted, but the ripple effect it had was one to last a lifetime. And also one I couldn't share with my mom. 5 years later, I'm 23, and my straight, cis female best friend, Katia, joins Noche de Cultura, Night of Culture, a Latinx event at UCLA with a variety of performances including several student-written and directed plays. Different directors and coordinators ask her to join their plays, and despite having the choice of participating in whatever interests her, she chooses to participate in an LGBTQIA+ inclusive play, playing a lesbian. She lets me know of her choice and tells me that this is her way of showing everyone, her family, her friends, and most importantly me, that she supports and loves me. When I mention to my mom, she prohibits me from going. It becomes an intense discussion of me mostly trying to make her understand that my sexual identity, my sexual orientation is not my choice. That I had too many years of repressing it, and that I wish she was more accepting. We both cry. I cry out of frustration, and she cries, mourning for my soul. My brother, without question, accompanied me to watch the play. Having a brother and a best friend along, with close friends and family that fully support me, in every stage and with who I am able to confide in, is what kept me grounded and strong. I wish I could say that my mom has since accepted me for who I am, that I am able to confide in her about the latest girl drama, comfort her for relationship advice, or tell her how happy I am with my current partner, but I can't. I understand her point of view being a Mexican Catholic woman. I know she loves me, and that as long as it is not discussed, we still have a solid relationship. The hardest part of looking the way I do, and of dating who I do, is not the hateful and judgmental looks I get on the street on an everyday basis, or in the restrooms, or the horrible messages of condemnation that I receive, but the wedge it has created between my mom and I. I have yet to give up hope that our relationship will get back to where it was. But until then, I am thankful for having a mom. Mi mamá. Thank you.
In the past, I told my mom everything. But I never shared with her that I'm not as straight as my sexual history implies. For a long time, I've identified as game, as in, I'm game, as in, if all parties are consenting, and if I'm into it, why the hell not? But the only problem was, I've never gone past kissing with anyone who wasn't a straight cisgender man. So I didn't know exactly how game I was. I worked to be a good ally and had out friends since high school. But I've never felt actively out myself. I never pursued wholeheartedly a relationship with someone who wasn't a straight cisgender man. And honestly, folks who aren't straight cisgender men just don't seem that into me, so never happened. And I've never gotten any real experiences to really nail home these feelings I've been having since puberty. So I continued to identify as just game, because I didn't feel like any label truly fit my experience or who I was. A couple years ago at summer camp, I was a camp counselor, and I'd say a solid 60% of the camp staff were out, and everyone else was allies, I hope, probably. I didn't feel comfortable labeling myself as other than game, and at one point, received some backlash for doing so. A friend of mine, well, friend at the time, who was toxic, also identified as gay, and at one point when I was describing my willing orientation, said, but she's only ever slept with straight cisgender men, totally invalidating my experience and feelings. And it really made it clear to me that I wasn't exactly sure what identities I had. I stopped sharing with people that I was game, and I got on Tinder. Ladies were not interested in me. But that's okay, because within a couple days on the app, I met my current boyfriend, who is the most wonderful and kindest straight cisgender man I've ever met. I'm like so in love that sometimes I cry just thinking about it. Like, it's hardcore. And during this past year and a half, that's how long we've been dating and how long I've been in Oregon, I've come to realize that, geez Louise, I'm questioning and basically have been this whole time. But if I continue to date my wonderful boyfriend, and if we do continue for the long run, will I always be stuck questioning? Will I never know if I'm bisexual, pansexual, or just game? Will I only ever figure it out if I end up single in my middle age and start dating someone who isn't a straight cisgender man? It's a lot to think about. But back to my mom. I've recently been thinking about telling her. I've told some friends, my boyfriend knows, but a lot of people still don't. And I don't feel like it's all that important for me to tell everyone, just because it doesn't feel super concrete to me. My mom, though, I'm pretty sure she'd be pretty cool with it. And she might already know. One time, she told me a story that she had, this conversation that she had with my sister where my mom sat my sister down and was like, Audrey, I love you no matter what, whether you were gay or, and my sister interrupted her saying, Mom, I'm not gay, I'm with Joel, her current fiance, who's a straight cisgender man. And my mom said, I know, but if you were gay. And Audrey said, but I'm not gay. She knows herself, it's pretty cool. And my mom backtracked a bit and said, okay, if Hannah was gay. And Audrey said, oh yeah, of course we both still love her, no matter what. And my mom told me this, and I really quick kind of awkwardly shrugged it off, like, sure, okay. Not really sure what she meant, and it was really weird and random, so she might know. And I almost did tell her recently, actually. I heard about this event, and I was speaking, and I immediately texted my mom saying I had big news. We set up a time to talk. My mom lives on the East Coast. And then I realized that telling her about this would mean that I'd have to come out. She even asked me, so what's your big news? And I chickened out. So now I'm wondering if that'll ever be a really good time, or if I even should tell her, just because if I don't ever date anyone who isn't a straight cisgender man, I may never know either. Thank you.
Family has always been incredibly important to me. I grew up with two girls, Callie and Joyce, who, while not blood related to me, I considered sisters, whose parents are named Dana and Trudy, two women who are more in love than anyone I've ever seen. When I was young, I asked my mom, where are Callie and Joyce's dad? And my mom, Betty, looked at me and said, they have two moms who love them as much as any other parent. They don't need a dad because they have them. It doesn't matter if it's two dads or two moms or somewhere in between, because love is love and it comes from all of us. This was something that I took with me in life, and I applied to many things, especially when my parents got divorced. I was 16 and it was very hard, but I knew that even though my parents were no longer married, I knew they would still love me and my brother the same they always had. I reminded my mom of this when she came out to me as lesbian. Now, please know I have my mom's permission to tell this story. After she told me this, I reminded her that no matter who she was or who she loved, she would always still be my mom, and I'd love her no matter what. She then revealed to me that she was incredibly scared to tell my father, Scott, for fear of judgment and just straight up anger. I assured her that my dad would support her no matter what, and when she told him, he simply asked, "Are you happy?" When she replied yes, he said, "That's all I want for you." My mother's honesty with me drove me to be honest with my family, yet I still had so much fear. And for a long time, I considered just living my life as a straight man. Of course, I knew that my parents would accept me and love me, but I don't think I had truly accepted myself. I thought there was plenty of time to tell my family who I am, and I have my whole life ahead of me. But when I was 17, I was forced to look at my life differently. On October 1st, 2015, I was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia, a cancer of the bone marrow. At this point, I was forced to face my own mortality. This, above all, is what pushed me to start living my life as if it could be my last day, and I had to start by being honest with my family. A few months after my diagnosis, I was eating dinner with my father, and I turned to him and said, "Dad, I have realized I'm bisexual." And in Scott-like fashion, he simply said, "Max, are you happy you told me this?" When I replied yes, he said, "Good. Want some more steak?" Well, anticlimactic. That was probably the best response I could have asked for. Yeah, I know, it's really good. Probably the best response I could have asked for. And when I told my mom, she simply said, "You're still my son, and I'll love you no matter what." All in all, I had basically the best coming out experience I could have asked for. And I'm so lucky to have such a loving family. But I want to quickly take a moment to say that my story is unique and it's privileged. I strive to be part of a generation that makes it where people can be who they are and love who they wish and not be judged for it. For as the great Captain Holt of the 9-9 once said, every time someone steps up and says who they truly are, the world becomes a better, more interesting place. Now, for my last piece of business. While my family knows who I am, not everyone does. So I'm here tonight to say, my name is Max Groshong, I'm an Aquarius, a cancer survivor, and I'm bisexual.
So we have reached the end of our evening, and just some closing remarks. The stories that you've heard tonight are ultimately about braving the wilderness of authenticity. Being yourself and loving yourself and owning your story, even when it's vulnerable and you're uncertain of the outcome or social consequence. But hopefully these stories bring us closer to truly seeing one another. It is all about what Joy eloquently stated, that we care very much about you, your identity, and your happiness. We love you for you, whoever you are, no matter what, and our love for you is unconditional. I love you all for coming tonight. And thank you so much for giving to the Safe Zone. And again, every donation that you made in intermission, and I'll even extend on their behalf, I'm sure they mean this, to the end of the show, to the Safe Zone, will be matched. So please don't leave with money in your pockets, because it's going to be matched. And then also, if you haven't had a chance, please write on that board on the table by the door what your thoughts are about this event. I want to also spend a moment to thank our interpreters tonight. This is a very Western-built production. And I want to thank Audrey Ramirez-Loudenbach and Halleen Ida Anderson, both are Western alumni and staff and faculty here at the university. And as I don't know where he is, oh, there he is in the back of the room, my platonic life partner, Ted DeChatelet. I love this man so much. Leave with these stories in your hearts and in your minds, and the story of Ella, and the story of joy, and you all deserve joy, both in a parent and in your heart, and if you don't have that in your family of origin, you have that in this room. And just know that there are confidential advocates with Abby's House and others who want to lift you up, and we want that for Western, for today and for 10 years from now, 7 or 8 years when Ella gets here. At this time, I'd like to invite all of our storytellers up for one final bow, and they are allowing you to take pictures of their beautiful faces. This is the cast of the 2019 Coming Out Monologues at Western.